Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is April 24th, 2022, and you are now watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. My name is Ronald Lin, the host of the fastest growing political talk show in New Jersey. Here on Real Talk with Ronnie, we only engage in real talk, real news in real time. We are now broadcasting on Salem Radio via AM 970. So if you want to listen to our program on one of New York City's biggest radio stations, please go to www.am970theanswer.com every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and click on the tab that says Listen Live on the top of the page during my show's broadcast time. In addition, the video component of our show is airing live on Facebook, Rumble, and Getter right now as well. So please follow me on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube by searching for Real Talk with Ronnie. If you're on Getter, search for my handle at Ronald Joseph Lin. Very soon, we will have very big news on the future of our fantastic program, so please stay tuned. Also, just as important, in the coming weeks, we will be having on some huge names, but in the meantime, if you want to come on our show or have a guest in mind, please let us know ASAP by emailing us at realtalkwithronnie@gmail.com. The sooner you reach out, the sooner we can get you onto our calendar. Now, before we begin our program tonight, I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about my campaign for Bergen County Commissioner here in Bergen County, New Jersey. I am very proud to have received the official endorsement of the Bergen County Republican Party. And as we head into the primary on June 7th, please remember to vote for me and the rest of my team on column 2. This year on my campaign, I just want to focus on a few issues that I truly believe all Bergen County residents, regardless of political party, care about. Now, number 1, education, education, education. What the liberal woke Democrats are forcing upon our children as young as 7 years old is unconscionable and egregious. Last week on my radio show, I spoke about this issue. They want to force our children to learn some pretty ridiculous nonsense in terms of sex education and gender identity. They want our kids as young as 7 to feel it is okay to identify as a boy, as a girl, or even both, regardless of their physical makeup. This is all true, and their curriculum has been made public. Now, let me be clear. I am completely opposed to this, and if there is ever a county initiative or proposal that reeks of this nonsense, including CRT, I will strike it down and vote against it, full stop. Number 2, crime. Now, all families want to feel safe. I don't care if you're white, black, brown, yellow, or fluorescent green. No one wants to feel unsafe in their neighborhoods, but unfortunately, Democrats don't care about that. Under Biden's America, illegal immigrants and migrants are being transported across our open borders indefinitely and coming to a town near you. As your county commissioner, I will oppose any and all plans to have any illegals land in Bergen County. Though not all, but some of these illegals are criminals, and we certainly do not want them in our county, draining our public resources and taking advantage of the system. By the way, a system that you all pay into. My parents immigrated from Taiwan into this country the right way, and most people, if not all people, by and large, believe in the idea of legal immigration, not the travesty of open borders, which is what we have right now. Number 3, and perhaps this is the most important one of all, checks and balances and lack of oversight. For the past 10 years, Bergen County has been mired in a one-party system. Democrats control it all, and in a stable and sound democracy, we can't have that. If we don't have proper oversight and a system of checks and balances, all the improvements and all the changes that we want to make will never, ever happen. Your taxes will continue to increase, cost of living will continue to go up, and your quality of life will keep going down. So first and foremost, elect me and get me in there. On our show tonight, we welcome back Dr. Dennis Peng. Dennis Peng first came on our program a few weeks ago, and his episode broke 3,000 views within the first 24 hours. 3,000. Dr. Peng is the host of True Voice of Taiwan, an immensely popular show on YouTube with over 300,000 followers and subscribers. Back in Taiwan, Dr. Peng was the most, and remains, I would say, he remains the most famous political and news commentator, personality, and anchor on Formosa Television, which is the biggest television station in Taiwan. Dr. Peng would broadcast every single night on Taiwanese TV on the biggest news of the day until until he started to broadcast on a story of the President of Taiwan's alleged fake doctoral degree from the London School of Economics. Now, as this story was gaining traction, Dr. Peng's show in Taiwan was inexplicably canceled. And while Dr. Peng was in the U.S., he was sued by President Tsai of Taiwan and charged by the prosecutor with 1 degree of libel against the Taiwanese president, which carries a sentence of up to 2 to 5 years in prison. Now, since 2020, Dr. Peng has remained in California, and for all intents and purposes, he's essentially a fugitive. Dr. Peng also has the unique distinction, I'm not sure if he wants this, but it's the unique distinction of being the first and only Taiwanese citizen to be sued by a sitting Taiwanese president. On our show tonight, we not only talk about Thesis-gate, we also delve into issues of extreme international significance, such as U.S. China relations, U.S. Taiwan relations, and China-Taiwan relations. All right, enough from me. Let's bring on Dr. Dennis Peng.
Maybe you taste different. Hold up, babe.
All right, guys, welcome back to Real Talk with Ronnie. We are now airing on Salem Media, on Salem Radio via AM 970, The Answer, every Sunday night from 8 to 9 p.m. On our show tonight, we have a very special guest. Dr. Dennis Peng was actually on my show a couple of weeks ago. But, his story was such a big story that show that aired on Facebook Live reached over 3,000 views in like a matter of days. So I decided that it would be a good opportunity to introduce Dr. Dennis Peng and his story to a much wider audience. And I was very pleased that Dr. Peng has agreed to come on my show on Salem Radio. Dr. Dennis Peng was a famous TV personality and political commentator on Formosa TV, which is the biggest television station in Taiwan for many, many, many years. So I can't stress how famous and how important that Dr. Peng is. Everybody in Taiwan knows him. He currently is a professor at National Taiwan University, which is by far the best university in Taiwan. No other university even comes close. I believe National Taiwan University is basically like the Harvard of Taiwan. So he is a professor there. He is a personality, a commentator. And, in 2019, he reported on a story that got a lot of media press, right? And you know what? I'm not going to tell the story. I will let the doctor himself tell the story. So Dr. Peng, thank you for coming on Real Talk with Ronnie.
Thank you, Ronnie, Dr. Lin, and my dear friends.
Yeah, so Dr. Peng, for all the audience, for the listeners that are listening to this program, why don't you introduce yourself to them?
Okay, my name is Dennis Peng, in Taiwanese name Peng Wenzheng. I'm a YouTuber now, and hosting a political show called True Voice of Taiwan. And this talk show aims to deliver a true voice, comments, or facts without commercial or political conflict of interest, if possible. And I have been a journalism professor and once the director at the Graduate School of Journalism at Taiwan University for 20 years. I earned my journalism PhD from the University of Wisconsin. What I love very much, my second hometown, Madison, Wisconsin, in 1995. And I've been living in Taipei, Taiwan my whole life until last June. A big life encounter occurred. My whole family, my wife, 3 kids, and a Formosan hunting dog. We moved to Bay Area, California since last June.
All right. And what exactly was, like, what caused you and your wife, your 3 kids, and your Formosan hunting dog to uproot from Taiwan and move to California? What exactly happened?
All right. I'm a fugitive now. My formal. Okay, let me put the story. Long story short, that's because I involved Taiwan's president's degree fraud scandal. All right. My backstory is that the first time I heard this thesis scandal was in 2015. Miss Tsai Ing-wen's PhD dissertation, in UK they called it doctoral thesis. The President Tsai's thesis couldn't found in any library in the world in 2015. At that time, I didn't pay much attention on that news. I thought it's again a fake news in the presidential campaign. 4 years later, in 2019, this topic was heated again during the presidential campaign. My colleague, also my colleague Professor Ho, who is the emeritus law professor at Taiwan University, she held a formal press conference, accused President Tsai's degree fraud scandal. I began looking into Tsai Ing-wen's doctoral thesis on my primetime TV talk show in Taiwan. This sensitive topic widespread and gets some attention in the lead up of Taiwan's 2020 presidential election. After a couple of weeks, I was sued in September 23rd, 2019 by President Tsai Ing-wen personally for a slander criminal charge. The Taiwanese prosecutor later issued a criminal arrest warrant and a statute of limitations for 13 years during my visiting children in the United States on November 19 last year. I might face 2 to 5 years of prison time if proved guilty. This is the first time ever a Taiwan citizen becomes the first person in Taiwan's history to be sued by a sitting president. Not only this, I received much harassment for my work on the story, enduring audits, receiving death threats, and being followed. But I get used to it.
Wow. Okay, so let me just recap this story for the listeners who might be tuning in now. So you were a very big TV journalist in Taiwan for many, many years. This story of President Tsai's PhD came about in 2015. Now, when you yourself first heard about this story, you even thought it was fake news, right? Mm-hmm. But then around, I believe, 2019, another professor by the name of Professor Ho started to talk about this. And I believe you said she had a press conference, right? Where she basically stated to the world that President Tsai's PhD degree from the London School of Economics, which she had graduated from, I believe, in the late 1980s, right? Mm-hmm. She asserted that this PhD degree is false because upon inspection of her thesis from, LSE, a thesis could not be found, right? Her doctoral thesis from LSE was never produced. And we all know, if you have, studied for a doctorate degree, that one of the prime components of a PhD is that you need to furnish, or you need to write a thesis, right? A doctoral, dissertation. So this dissertation was never found. And then from that point on your primetime TV show, you started to delve further into this topic, right? You talked about it more and more. Mm-hmm. And then during one of your visits to the U.S. in 2019, when you were visiting one of your kids, right? The prosecutor in Taiwan issued a charge of, I believe it was a charge of libel, right?
Right.
And, it was against you And with that charge, it carries a statute of limitations of 13 years,
Yes.
which effectively means that you cannot go back into Taiwan for the next 13 years unless you want to be arrested, prosecuted, and sentenced for up to 2 to 5 years in Taiwanese prison. So that, in effect, makes you a fugitive of Taiwan, right? And you are the first and only Taiwanese citizen in the history of Taiwan to be sued by a sitting Taiwanese president. Okay,
yes,
so
I think ever and ever.
Okay, all right. So why don't you walk us back on this story, right? So you even said yourself that you thought it was fake news back in 2015. What changed your mind? Why did you decide to talk about this story more and more in 2019?
Okay, I think it is common sense that without qualified doctoral thesis, what we call the dissertation, a PhD candidate would not be awarded a doctoral degree. That's iron rule. I mean, Ms. Tsai Ing-wen says she received her PhD from the London School of Economics in 1984. However, nobody could locate her doctoral thesis before 2019. President Tsai continuously claimed to the public that she earned a 1.5 PhD degree from LSE in 2 years at her age of 27. Tsai's exaggerated statement that due to her excellent achievement in international trade, she is awarded an additional 0.5 PhD degree. Such ridiculous.
Can I just ask you though?
Yeah.
How is that possible for someone to earn 1.5 degrees? I mean, I have a PhD, right? And I believe it's just 1 degree.
Yep.
So how do you earn that extra half a degree? How does that work?
And that's why she can be a president, I think. All right, such ridiculous statement on not just in her public speech, but also in her autobiography, a written autobiography. In Chinese, what we call 洋葱炒蛋与小英便当. This also attracted the attention of some scholars and public attention to read her doctoral thesis and to discover Tsai's 38 years of academic fraud. University of North Carolina at Charlotte Business School professor Huang Ling filed investigation this scandal and published a 50-page report suggesting that Tsai Ing-wen never received a PhD. One key piece of evidence is the insistence by the University of London's library that it never received a copy. When presented with these evidences, Tsai Ing-wen responded by suing the 3 scholars of defamation. Me, University of North Carolina Professor Ling, and Emeritus Law School Professor of Taiwan University, Ms. Ho. Since then, my show, The True Voice of Taiwan, kept investigating, uncover, and comment on this scandal every single day. Let me put it in more details. On the same day, the presidential office announced their intention to litigate, then legislator Apollo Chen Xuesheng, discovered that all documents related to Tsai Ing-wen's time as a professor at the universities in Taiwan were quietly classified and designated a top secret. They can't be classified until December 31st, 2049. After our investigation and the press conference, Tsai sent a copy of so-called her thesis to the Women's Library and London School of Economics and Political Science on June 28th, 2019. Well, I also went to the London School of Economics and Political Science and the University of London, searched all libraries, and interviewed the librarians and school officials. They told me this so-called thesis never received. It's not missing. It's never received since 1983 until 2019. A different format, different layout, personal copy was sent to LSE's women's libraries. But It is not the thesis. It's just a personal note. Another scholar graduated from Oxford, Dr. Xu Yongtai, published an article in the Chinese language US-based newspaper World Journal 世界日报 on September 18, 2019. In this article, Dr. Xu shared his thoughts about Tsai Ing-wen's publicized dissertation. She raised several questions regarding the thesis. First, this thesis, supposedly written in 1983, was rather unpublished overall. Not only that, but the way the thesis was formatted indicated that it was composed using technology available only after 1984. There were a lot of handwritten corrections and trace of whiteouts. The thesis also used American spelling rather than the British spelling, which is unusual for the London School of Economics and Political Science. The total so-called thesis ended up with more than 500 spelling and typo errors. And after at least more than hundreds of inquiries of Tsai's mysterious degree over the last 3 years, the University of London finally posted a so-called statement on the school's web, although it's still an anonymous statement. The only response is on February 2nd, 2022. The statement confirmed that Tsai earned her degree in 1983, but they didn't explain why there was no thesis until 2019. The University of London says it remains unclear why the thesis was never published, never cited, and even nobody had ever read. They didn't explain, nor has any intention to investigate it. My team and I launched an independent investigation into Tsai's thesis. Everything we found suggested there were extensive cover-ups, possible quid pro quo donations made to education institutions, and forged documents. Among the most interesting discoveries is the trip Tsai Ing-wen took to London School of Economics in 2011, where she met with several school officials and even attempted to submit an improper thesis into the University of London's library. President Tsai Ing-wen claimed she graduated from the London School of Economics PhD program in 1984. However, my team uncovered records indicating that she was back in Taiwan by 1983, teaching at Suzhou University, which is Dongwu Daxue. Taiwan's president's office changed its story. This is a common occurrence, with officials constantly changing their story to fit my findings. Also, in its supposed 30-year existence, President Tsai Ing-wen's thesis was never once cited in any other academic publication. Not a single library in the world held a copy of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis prior to 2019. Furthermore, records of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis in digital database were found to be created rather recently, as opposed to in 1984, when it should have been created. The London School of Economics and Political Science's reputation has taken a battering over links with the Libyan regime, which include a donation of it's around $2 million US from a charitable foundation run by Zaif Gaddafi, who studied at the LSE. And just as Zaif Gaddafi's donation was used to set up a North Africa research program in 2007, when Tsai was vice premier, an anonymous donation around 480,000 pounds to the LSE was assigned to Miss Shi Fanglong to set up a Taiwan research program with LSE. This lady who claimed to hold 2 doctorates from LSE was Tsai's close friend. Dr. Shi has publicly represented LSE Taiwan research program by covering up Tsai's academic fraud conducted in 1983 and in 1984, and is still going on. And some scholars in the United States and United Kingdom asked Information Commission Office, which is ICO, using the Freedom of Information Act to release Tsai's viva, which is oral defense result in 1983, including Tsai's oral defense time, place, examiner's name, and results. These requests has been refused by University of London, the London School of Economics and Political Science, and the Information Commissioner's Office in United Kingdom, because they say that this information is protected by the Act of Privacy. And several scholars, including me, sued by, we also sued University of London and LSE at the British Tribunal Court, and we are still waiting for a long battle.
Okay. So I believe, the last time you were on my show, I asked you this question, right? I said, President Tsai, she attended the LSE back in the 1980s, right? And granted, back then, perhaps the archiving system wasn't as sophisticated as it is today, right? Because today we are in the age of internet, right?
Yes.
So could it just be possible that her thesis was written, that just wasn't saved?
Okay, a normal doctor, no matter back to 1980s, 70s, or 60s, if all 3 library has lost, your dissertation was lost, at least you yourself should keep it, right? At least your parents should keep it, right? Okay, I think more than 10 people, including my ex-girlfriends, they kept my dissertation, okay?
Wow, it seems like you had a lot of ex-girlfriends.
No. So
now, when President Tsai went to the London School of Economics, she must have had classmates, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, during that time, were the dissertations of her classmates found?
This is very, very weird story. President Tsai has no classmate.
Really?
We interviewed several doctoral students in 1983 and 1984, around that period. They don't know this lady. And Tsai only showed one picture that she say she and her sister photoed in the London School of Economics for the purpose that her sister is waiting for her oral defense. But it was found that background was in Boston, Massachusetts. And she doesn't even have any transcript or any other solid evidences that can, prove that her study in the London School of Economics and Political Science in 1983 or 1984. It's very, very weird. And we have a lot of friends, a lot of classmates, professors can, stand out and prove that, hey, Dennis Peng, my classmate, Ronald Ling, hey, we studied together. But President Tsai, no friend, no classmate.
Wow. Okay. So for all the listeners who are tuning in, so this thesis that you had been questioning on, it was not in the records for LSE for all these years until 2019, right? 2019, this thesis, it magically came about. And when this thesis was examined, it was very clear that it was written using technology that was post 1984. And what makes the story even weirder is that, as you mentioned, no one in London School of Economics around that time remembered President Tsai as their classmate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or maybe someone remember but didn't speak out. I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
So let me ask you something, Dr. Peng. Assuming, and let's just suppose that perhaps this story is true, right? Perhaps that President Tsai somehow didn't have a thesis, it was fabricated. What are the implications of that to Taiwan?
Well, I think it's a matter of value. I should say that from this thesis scandal, I see how vulnerable the Taiwan's media system, the administrative system, and the government, how vulnerable they are. It's really miserable, and well, I think there are several indicators that I feel disappointed. The first one is President Tsai's violation of the freedom of press. President Tsai uses the taxpayers' money to bribe and control the media so that nothing negative about her would be aired. The only exceptions is the Taiwan TV channel called CTI TV News becomes the owner. This CTI TV was shut down, was closed by Tsai, and the owner was ranked as the wealthiest person in Taiwan, which allowed the CTI TV to fight against Tsai. And the CTI TV News was shut down by Taiwan National Communication Commission, NCC, in November 2020. And after its news channel was shut down, the CTI TV moved to YouTube as what I did. And very soon, over 2.7 million of the Taiwanese population downloaded its app with YouTube. And on October 28th, 2021, Tsai's Legislative Assembly passed amending articles in the organic law of the National Communication Commission, NCC, a government authority with all commissioners appointed by Tsai's administration can ban internet content.
Okay.
And I think Tsai wholly violates Taiwan's freedom of the press. And also, I think President Tsai abused the freedom of speech. On December 29, 2019, President Tsai's administration passed the Anti-Infiltration Act. The Anti-Infiltration Act, they say, Act and the existing Social Order Maintenance Act, that's what we call Social Order Maintenance Act, allow President Tsai's administration to impose high fines or 5 years of the imprisonment prosecution against those who cast Tsai or her administrations in a negative light. Moreover, police can harass victims and arrest them on charges of a criminal offense without requiring a warrant.
Okay. And this is all under the recently passed law in Taiwan, the social, what is it again?
What we call the social maintenance law.
Okay, the social maintenance law, which was meant to basically keep order on the social media platforms, right? Now, let me ask you something. So what do you think, what are your thoughts on the notion of free speech in Taiwan? Do you think it's dead? Do you think it's still there? What do you think?
I think Taiwan's most threats are not from missiles, not from China, nor the U.S.-China relations, but Taiwan herself.
Okay.
I think the gradually losing democracy is the biggest crisis of Taiwan. And I think the Thesis-gate scandal brings into question that is Taiwan still a democratic country as it has been? And I think the president's integrity and the credibility of Taiwan's government is rather important than anything else. Throughout the investigation, the government has mobilized substantial assets to hinder the efforts at every turn. The story exposes a problematic abuse of power at the highest level of government in Taiwan. It shows how Taiwan's bureaucratic and judicial system are vulnerable to corruption.
Okay. So, according to you, the biggest threat facing Taiwan is not necessarily China or U.S. China relations. The biggest threat facing Taiwan today is Taiwan itself, right? But speaking of the issue with China, right? What do you think is the future of China-Taiwan relations? Do you think Taiwan will eventually go back to China, or how do you think that pans out?
Well, first of all, a principle is that no matter what, the decision about Taiwan's future should only be decided by 26 million Taiwanese people's free will, period. However, we as Taiwanese people and government, on the other hand, should and ought to do our own best to maintain a good relationship with China, our neighbors, and also our brothers and sisters. And I don't think the war will break out between China and Taiwan, because I do trust Chinese wisdom. And what Taiwan should do is, the Bible once said, shall love the Lord, they God, with all their heart, and with all their soul, and with all their strength, and with all their mind, and their neighbor as themselves. And as you would that man should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. I think the only key principle to maintain the world peace is never do to others what you don't want others do to you.
Right. Well, that's a very wise saying, right? But I mean, so do you really believe in your heart of hearts that war between China and Taiwan will never break out?
I trust Chinese wisdom.
Okay.
And I think that there are always a win-win-win situation among Taiwan, China, and the United States. It's a small world.
Right.
A super high-tech world. And also, on the other hand, it's a nuclear world. No one can win in a hostile international relations.
Okay. But, as we see right now, the situation with Russia going into, Ukraine, the fact that America has, in some sense, it's not being respected now on the world stage. That's why countries like Russia are going into other nations, right? So given that fact, are you worried that perhaps China might see this as a good chance to go into Taiwan because, the U.S. leadership is pretty weak now?
I don't see the crisis right now between Russia and Ukraine will happen in Taiwan. I think it's a different situation. The only thing I worry about is the Taiwanese people choosing the wrong president. And don't ever think that provocative can solve any problem. And however, that doesn't mean that the 26 million Taiwanese people cannot express or cannot even choose their own way of living. But I think overall speaking, it has to be in a peaceful way. So I'm still optimistic.
Okay. Where do you see the future of Taiwan on the world stage in the coming years? Do you think there's a role for Taiwan, or what do you think?
I do believe that Taiwan's role will be led by Taiwanese people themselves. And I would see the biggest threat to Taiwan is not from missiles, not from China, not from the international relations. It's from the losing democracy. That's the biggest crisis of Taiwan. It's gradually losing value. I think this is the most miserable thing in Taiwan. And through the Thesis-gate scandal, we really doubt, is Taiwan still a democratic country as it has been? That's what I worry most.
Okay. Now, President Tsai, she's currently serving her second term, right? In Taiwan, can you run for a third term?
No, but she tried to.
Oh, really?
She tried to. Yeah, she tried to do the learn from Putin and Xi Jinping. She tried to make laws.
Okay, so she's currently trying to change the law to allow herself to run for a third term. Her second term is up when? In 2024?
The May 20th, 2024. Yes.
Okay, so there is speculation that she will try to change that law and run for a third term.
I don't know, because now the DPP, which is her party, controls majority of the seats. So once what they want to do, they can do. I mean.
Okay. Now, let me ask you something, Dr. Peng. So you're currently, for all intents and purposes, a fugitive, right?
Right.
Of the Taiwanese government. Where do you see yourself in the coming years? Are you going to actively fight this prosecution, or are you just going to stay in the U.S. and just kind of wait it out for the next, 13, 14 years?
Okay, certainly, I wouldn't fight for only my case. I would certainly fight for the justice and what I call the value of Taiwan. Certainly, in a short period, I will be caught and sent to jail if I go back to Taiwan now. For myself, I dare not to go to jail, but I need to gather more evidences and announce these findings to the media and get public attention before I go to jail. So I do believe this ever largest degree fraud scandal will be uncovered soon, if not in a month, in a year, coming soon.
But you are, prepared to go to jail if it comes to that, right?
Right.
Wow. Okay, so you will go to jail for pretty much for exposing what you think is the truth, right? And I believe that you think it's important for the people to know the truth at all costs, right? Even if it means you going to jail and losing your freedom. Well, I think that's a pretty noble thing.
Well, as Bible said again, blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake,
right.
For there is the kingdom of heaven. I do believe this ever largest degree again, this degree fraud scandal again will be uncovered soon.
Okay, but do you have any like immediate plans to go back to Taiwan within the next few years, or no?
Probably in next few weeks, if necessary. I'm ready. Actually, when I visit the United States, I only bring one suitcase to the United States. I thought I would come back to home in a couple weeks, but I was, so I can go back anytime because I am clean. I didn't make any mistakes. Right. I just do what a journalist should do. That's all.
Right. But the moment you step foot onto Taiwanese soil, you will be arrested, right?
Certainly.
Wow, and that's
For
something
sure.
that you are prepared to face. Well, I think that's a pretty brave thing to face down. Um, but in the meantime, before you go back to Taiwan, you still broadcast every single night from your YouTube channel, right? And the name of your YouTube channel is True Voice of Taiwan.
Yes.
This is a show that you air nightly, right? On a
Right.
daily basis. I
Yes.
think you even air on Christmas. So you air every single day and you talk about this Thesis-gate. And so for all the listeners that are listening and to all the viewers who are watching, please check out Dr. Dennis Peng's page on YouTube. You can search for it, True Voice of Taiwan. Now, I understand that your show is broadcasted in Mandarin, right? However, you do have an English version of the show that comes out like once every 2 weeks, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Uh-huh.
So Dr. Dennis Peng's show, True Voice of Taiwan, you can find it on YouTube. He's got over 300,000 followers, a very big star, a very big name in Taiwan. And we hope you don't go back to Taiwan because I don't want to see you prosecuted. But if you do have to go back, we wish you the best of luck. And we hope to have you on our show again really, really soon for an update on this situation, on your legal battle, and on everything else. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I also wish President Joe Biden can follow my program.
Oh yeah, well, we hope that President Joe Biden can also come on my show, right? I think that would be a pretty big show. But thank you, sir,
Okay.
for coming on, and we will talk to you very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.